Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bet the Edge. Thanks for everyone watching on our NBC Sports YouTube channel or listening live in audio form. Coming up today, Minnesota forced a Game 5 Western Conference Series extended. We're also going to talk about the Indiana Fever, whether or not to bet them to make or miss the playoffs, and Caitlin Clark's Rookie of the Year and MVP odds, plus French Open updates with none other than the whale capper, IMV Money. And it's a great day. I'm happy to be back on vacation, Drew. Happy to be doing Bet the Edge with you. I'm in a new location. I'm doing doggy daycare on the road. So if you see some dogs, you see some cats, don't be alarmed. You hear some barks, some purrs. It's just Drew. How we doing, Drew?
Oh, we're great, man. It's going to be tough to me to kind of regain focus and talk sports coming off of one of the most insane tennis matches of the year, if not the most crazy. Iga versus Naomi Osaka was absolutely electric. Everything you could ask for in a tennis match. And yeah, I've been buzzing for like 2 hours because that was something else, man. And excited to talk some French Open. Excited to hear some of your takes on baseball and basketball. And yeah, this is going to be a great show.
Yeah, well, as always, it's always a great show, and hopefully it's a profitable one and a knowledgeable one for everyone listening. And as I said to start the show, excited that the Timberwolves extended the series in the Western Conference. We didn't want some sweeps. We didn't want them across the board. And a lot to talk about, Drew, because, Karl Anthony Towns looked fantastic in the second half of Game 4. Anthony Edwards, of course, carried the torch in the first half of that game. A lot of people expecting Dallas to close out the series, whether it's Game 5 or Game 6, but we got the T-Wolves as a 4.5-point favorite for Game 5. Total sitting at 209.5. I automatically lean the under. I think the T-Wolves are the right side. I think, and I'll agree with Jay. I saw Jay send out a tweet, and it's not normally when I will go on there and agree with Jay, but I was like, hey, he's on to something. I think the T-Wolves are a pretty good team to consider coming back down from a 3-0 deficit. Now it's a 3-1.
Yeah.
It's obviously easier to say that, but I think that this is a team I'm willing to back to force a Game 7.
Yeah, I mean, presumably the hardest, one of the hardest two was the one you already gotten, which was, a road game and ultimately a game where you didn't get an especially favorable whistle. Your biggest stars were in foul trouble from Jump Street. I think all three, Rudy, Edwards, and Cat, most notably, obviously, all had 3 fouls at halftime. Cat fouls out, and the fact that they won in spite of all that was pretty wild. The Timberwolves made some very impressive shots. They've been making shots all series, but they made some impressive shots, and it felt like you definitely felt the absence of Lively. I thought he was a huge difference maker in the first 3 games of this series, and so him not being available definitely hurt the Mavericks, particularly their flow on offense. And I think just in general, Luka being a little bit of a whiny baby when it came to how he was being officiated didn't really get to help the Mavericks kind of get into their flow. I mean, I don't know why you at some point you don't just kind of give it a rest and start getting back on defense, but he was just consistently going to the refs in that game and ultimately hurt them. So it was a weird game. It didn't have a ton of flow to it, and I thought the Timberwolves were the deserved winners. And surely now, as 4.5-point favorites at home in Game 5, you would think that we could very well see a 6th game to this series. And as long as Lively is unavailable, then you have to think that there is a very real chance that the Mavericks still have their toughest test ahead of them to get through to the next round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think this series is over by any means. And I find it interesting, a little bit of the overreaction to the lines, too, because as someone who live bet the last game, didn't put them out as official plays or anything, but I took the first half over in the Minnesota-Dallas Game 4, and live bet it came through. But the adjustment to it now being from about 98.5, 99.5 to 107.5 certainly makes me think that this is probably a first half under play for me here. I think that possessions definitely will be very pivotal, and you'll see some of these guys kind of not want to shoot threes as much. You saw Maxi Kleber come back from injury. He passed on like every 3-point chance pretty much. And I wanted to note something you said too, because you're talking about the physicality of Luka Doncic. Felt like Minnesota definitely turned that up a notch in Game 4, but I also felt like Luka Doncic played no defense, just focused on offense. So it allowed Minnesota to be more physical for him. Like Luka Doncic played essentially a free safety role defensively on the court, where he was just kind of roaming, letting that 3-point line stay open in the key. So I think Minnesota will attack them moving forward in Game 5 and attack him specifically. But is there something you like, whether it's in this game or in this series? Because Minnesota played a plus 425, plus 450 to win the series in 7. Doesn't seem super appealing now, but still viable option.
Yeah, I'm basically coattailing Jay on this series, so my thoughts aren't super original. But he talked into solid case that Timberwolves were at bet at price, and considering they had 5 and 7 at home, then you were basically taking the coin flip yesterday and trying to turn that into a bigger payout. I think he got 14-1, by the way. I think the best I got was like 12-1. But all that said, it's still a very long way to go. And you want to break down what you saw with the Dallas Mavericks. In a closeout game, their shooters were a little cold. They were a little tight. PJ Washington, most notably, he took 9 threes, only made 2. Kyrie Irving could not find it from distance, and his shooting has been a little bit off this entire series. I don't know if that has to do with the Timberwolves defense or if it's just sort of the natural fluctuation of things. And it was kind of wild to see a Timberwolves team with their stars in trouble and their super bench, their sixth man of the year, super bench man Naz Reid was a -10 in this game, gave you nothing offensively, and yet they still found a way to win. Was pretty wild because they definitely have better games in them than we've seen in this series. Anthony Edwards looked early on in this series like he was very much feeling the fatigue of having played 90 games in regular season plus playoffs, and having the defensive assignment of running around with Kyrie Irving was wearing him down. But he's pivoted back, and he's kind of given up some of the defensive intensity that we saw and traded it for effective offense. And the Timberwolves have needed it mightily to keep up with what the Mavericks have out there, and that was one of the huge differences here. So we're on equal rest now, neutral rest for these two teams. We're playing every other game. That may benefit the Timberwolves slightly because they are just a little bit younger and relying on a little bit younger legs, and a little bit less kind of, they've had to fire fewer bullets in the playoffs than the Mavericks had to this point. So this could very well be the comeback in the making. And I'm not going to get involved at 4.5 in games. In game 5, I think 4.5 is actually a little bit too high. My fair on this one is only 3.5. And in general, my fares have been favorable to the Mavericks every step of the way in this series. So I guess that's kind of just in keeping. But the availability of Derek Lively is the key news to follow as of this moment during recording. He is questionable with the neck. We think that's more likely a concussion than it is a true neck, and concussion could end up lingering beyond just game 5 and deeper into the series if there is deeper into the series. So a lot of chances here, I think, for Minnesota to get back into this one. And I think the fact that we haven't really seen a good Karl-Anthony Towns game from whistle to whistle is probably concerning for the Mavericks, because there could be one of those in the
could be this one. Yeah, and I'm going to stay there with the 2 big men, because you said Derek Lively, but if he does come back, you see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, Daniel Gafford's points props 9.5, -110 to the over, -120 to the under. That one really derives on if Lively plays, because Gafford's numbers are hiked up a little bit now. So you'll get good value on taking his unders for points or points, rebounds, or the combo prop of points plus rebounds, which I like. And for Cat, you noted it. I mean, his points is 19.5. He could certainly, now that we've just seen him gain his confidence back, 20 points, 25 plus, ladder and Karl-Anthony Towns in game 5. That seems like a pretty good option. To be honest, he's going to play his best basketball probably in this next game. Has all his confidence back. And you noted Kyrie Irving, too, hasn't found a shot. I've been making money on his points and rebounds prop. If you think you look at Kyrie Irving and say 23.5 points, that is too low. Kyrie Irving can get that. I mean, I agree with you, but he's not lately, Drew. When you tack on 3 or 4 rebounds on top of that points prop and you're getting 26, 27, 28.5, I mean, that's even better. So he's not going to be physical enough to go out and get rebounds when you got Cat, Gobert, Naz Reid, and you got Gafford, Lively, and all these guys, PJ Washington as well. So there is a good bit of player prop markets that I do like in that game. And that's kind of how I would look at them. And last thing I'll note here is I saw something that was trending the other day that had me cracking up. Do you know what Naz Reid's nickname is, Drew?
We do. This came up a couple of times during the course of the regular season, as we were actually the #1 fan pod of the Naz Reid because of the 6th man of the year implications. But Big Jelly.
Big Jelly. I love it. You know what his number 2 nickname is, according to the
No,
announcers?
no.
It's Nas Reed, because I'm gonna ruin basketball for you. Every time you listen to him, let him call a basketball game with Nas Reed, they never say Nas or Reed. They always say Nas Reed.
Nasrid.
So the joke is he's Nas Reed Reed. That's his nickname. So the Big Jelly and Nas Reed is Nas Reed's nicknames. But all right, we got Caitlin Clark and more to come after this. But if you didn't know, can Nelly Korda, excuse me, I'm getting too excited. Can Nelly Korda continue her historic run on the LPGA Tour? Find out this week when she competes against the world's best at the U.S. Women's Open, presented by Ally. Tune in Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. Should be a good one. And while we're on the topic of the Indiana Fever, which I was excited to talk about with you today, I, like most people, have looked at betting Caitlin Clark Rookie of the Year odds over the last week or two, but it has been impossible. I mean, we're talking minus 1100 to minus 1500s everywhere, right? So Caitlin Clark obviously was the best bet in the summer. The time to bet her Rookie of the Year has long passed. But what other ways would you be looking at betting Caitlin Clark, Drew?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I still think 1100 minus 1100 for Rookie of the Year is bettable. She's gotten through the portion, and I guess let's just kind of do a hard reset. A lot was expected of her. She has been kind of delivered, marketed as this, the specific player that is going to elevate WNBA to the cultural relevance that, the women's tennis and women's golf and, the other kind of, clear sportswear. We're acknowledging the incredible, performances from these women, and the WNBA has, a unique opportunity to take a huge step forward this year in terms of subscribers and Q rating, everything. And they come out of the gates with a very short turnaround off the heels of the college basketball season. The draft is held. It's a bigger event than it's ever been because of Caitlin Clark. The season starts. We are setting like kind of new high watermarks in terms of viewership for individual games because people want to see her play at the WNBA level. And it's been a rough start. I don't think that's even, I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, it's like she has been underwhelming at times. And a ton of that is two factors. Number one, she's on a pretty bad team. There are not a lot of other Indiana Fever players who are really kind of at the, all WNBA level that she can learn from and play off of. She's kind of on an island. Expected to do quite a lot, and with a coach that I have some sincere questions about. And then the schedule was extremely compressed for the Indiana Fever to start the season, to where they're playing, consistently on the road and just a heavy turnover of games, which is a huge adjustment from the college ranks to where you're playing twice a week to now you're playing every other day, and you're traveling, and then to top everything off, I have felt from what I've seen that the WNBA players aren't especially enamored the way the rest of us are with the Caitlin Clark story and the narrative and the fact that she's taking a lot of the air out of the room. And there was certainly in the first couple of games an elevated physicality in defending her that I thought was a little bit unwarranted. The refs kind of let them play, but she got pushed around and beat up a little bit, and it didn't really feel like that she was getting any kind of a warm welcome from the other players in terms of what made her so special at the college level. But that's all started to settle down a little bit, and she's playing perfectly well, but perfectly fine right now. And most of the coverage is pivoting to stuff like she's getting technicals for being vocal with the refs, and who cares? Like, that stuff is fluff. And in reality, like the truth and the facts are that the Fever as a team are just not necessarily good enough to win basketball games. They're 1-7 on the year, and really most of those 7 losses were not really very competitive. They have the worst point differential in the WNBA right now with a minus 11.8. You look at the some of these other teams, like the Indiana Fever have played 8 games. The Atlanta Dream have played 4. The Lynx, the Aces have played 4. Like, there's just a weird imbalance where they've really thrown them into the gauntlet early here, and it has not served them well as a team because they're not especially good. So I think what kind of I would look to do right now is try to capture a little bit of a buy low on the team overall. Their yes/no playoffs were about minus 285 to start the season to the yes, and that yes is now plus 110. So you can get plus money on that. And again, yes, they have banked some losses, but the playoff format for the WNBA is the top 8 teams get in. And so realistically, they have to jump, 3 other teams to get themselves into the 8th slot. And honestly, with the fact that they've played all of these games early, they haven't had time to practice. They haven't gelled as a team. They haven't even really figured out roles and responsibilities around Caitlin Clark. Well, now you have 8 games of like actual kind of film to study, and you have more time to practice. So I think that the quality of play you're going to see from the Fever over this next quarter of the season is going to be substantially better than what you saw in the first 8 games. And ultimately, this is a 40-game season, so there is plenty of time left for the Fever just to get better and be more competitive. I think Caitlin Clark in particular, like if you look at her points totals, if you look at her 3-point made totals, and they start to, kind of really, they've come down a lot correctly. But there may be a buy low on some of these, as well as, just the fact that they're getting more rest, the fact that they're getting more practice, and then the fact that, she's going to start getting the superstar whistle at some point, you would expect, are all going to be factors for her having improved performance on a game by game level. And with that, an elevation in the Indiana Fever's win-loss.
Yeah, and I like everything you said too in a lot of ways. And their regular season over win total now is at 15.5, plus 115 to the over as well. So that's definitely another angle of looking at them. And you talked about the imbalance in the schedule. Part of me thinks that is because the WNBA also wanted to push the product as well and push Caitlin Clark out there. And they're a younger team, but they've been competitive. Although they played almost every other day to start the season. I mean, they have 2-point losses, 4-point losses, 8-point losses, 6-point losses. Like they're in a lot of the games, despite being a little more fatigued. But she's made the effect clear. There's 2 examples of the Caitlin Clark effect, Drew. The first is the clip that's going around from a few days ago of a defender shooting one of her 2 free throws, and after she makes the first free throw, she runs the guard Caitlin Clark, and the refs say, "No, you got a second free throw." Then she goes and shoots a second free throw, then runs back to guard Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark had 30 points in that game. So that's the Caitlin Clark effect, that they're forgetting they have free throws. They're just trying to play defense on her. And secondly, as someone who's moving back to Connecticut, I want to be a Connecticut Sun fan. I want to support that team while I'm living there and go to games. So, of course, I wanted to see Caitlin Clark come. When you look at tickets for the Dallas Wings, who are a good team, tickets start at $20. You look at the Aces, tickets are $40 to $50. The Fever starts at $100 for that game. Now, people can sell that because we'll buy them, right? I'm going to buy them still. But that's the Caitlin Clark effect of what she's going to do for this league, Drew. So I'm with you. Why her box scores for some games might not be eye-popping, we have to remember that this is her first 8 games, and she's also played double the amount of games as other people in the same rookie class. So I'm with you. I'm going to take them to make the playoffs. I'm not going to take her to win MVP. Is that something that you would eye up at all, or is that something we're going to say, hey, wait till next season, and then that's the time to start buying into Caitlin Clark MVP?
Yeah, her. I played a little bit preseason price at 11 to 1. That's dead money. She's not winning this season.
That's like Ronald Acuna, right?
Yeah. Ronald. She has a better chance than Acuna.
Yeah.
But that's not saying much. Here's the MVP picture right now. There are a couple of elite teams in the WNBA. It starts in Las Vegas, and then I would next go to the New York Liberty, and finally the Connecticut Sun. And the top player on the Aces is clearly Aya Wilson. Like she looks like she's playing a different sport. It is awesome seeing her perform at this level, and so she's the rightful favorite at minus 105. Alyssa Thomas is your kind of leading performer for the Connecticut Sun, I believe. And the Sun are kicking butt right now. They're undefeated. They've gotten to play the Fever twice. They've had a very easy schedule, so I think that probably comes back to earth, and that's going to take a little bit of air out of her price. The third choice right now, Nefessa Collier. I'm not seeing sustainable enough performance for her to warrant third choice here, but the fourth choice in Breanna Stewart is where I want to kind of direct attention right now for the WNBA MVP. Breanna Stewart's a 2-time winner. She's on the co-best team in the NBA with the New York Liberty. and she is leading in points and rebounds, and honestly has barely gotten going relative to what we know her ceiling can be over the course of this season, because it's early. Like, there's a lot of games left to be played for the New York Liberty in particular, who have played 6 so far, and I think she's going to help get them from what in the currently 4th seed to a top 2 seed when it's all said and done this year, and she's going to warrant some serious consideration. So I don't know that she can close the gap entirely on Aya Wilson. I don't know that she can pass her and win this award, but I think the next time we check in on this, it's going to be more of a 2-horse race between Wilson and Miss Stewart.
That would make sense too, because they were both the preseason favorites to win the award. Wilson was first at plus 175, so that's come down a little bit, and Stewart was plus 500, so you can get twice the price on that now. And the Liberty, a very fun team. I mean, they have a 3-headed monster in Stewart, Ionesco, and Jones, Jonquel Jones. She almost averages a double-double along with Brianna Stewart, so that's definitely a fun team to watch. And I don't think the two teammates there, Ionesco and Jones, take away from Stewart's MVP odds as well. At all. So I could buy into that one, but I do think I'm with you. Aya Wilson is certainly the favorite for a reason. I think she should win it. So A'ja Wilson at minus 105, probably the best bet for MVP. But Caitlin Clark will certainly be on the radar next year for MVP odds, Drew. But we do have to get to the French Open, because I want to hear your opinions on the women's and the men's draw. Before that, if you haven't heard, French Open promo, here we go. The biggest stars battle on the clay courts of Roland-Garros for a chance to be crowned a Grand Slam champion. You can stream the French Open on Peacock today through June 9th. And with that, you can see everything Drew says and see if he's right or he's wrong. Love it. It's like a crystal ball. You guys get to watch it live. So let's start with the women's draw, Drew. You were talking about how great it was. Where's your money going to be at now moving forward?
Well, speaking of watching crystal ball be very, very wrong in real time, I think yesterday I did not give Naomi Osaka anywhere close to enough credit. She was the better player today. In a loss, she was the better player than the current world number 1 and one of the best women's clay players that we've ever had in Iga Swiatek. The fact that Osaka produced that level was amazing, and I came out of that loss literally thinking, well, that she's just gonna win the U.S. Open. She might win the Australian Open, and ultimately, like, she has a level that I did not know she was capable of recovering to, and it was amazing seeing it all live. So hat tip to her for her performance today, and very much, if you're into the long-term futures market plays, if you don't have some exposure to Osaka to win the U.S. Open, then you better get some. Iga is still the likely winner of this tournament, despite the close call today. And I think it should be kind of noted that, like, sometimes when a heavy favorite like that is threatened and maybe should have lost, it's kind of your initial reaction is, well, she choked, right? Like, oh, she didn't come up with the level that she needed. And this was much more of Osaka surprising, I think, the world with what she showed from a quality standpoint than it was Iga, not bringing it. And I think the fact that she did not capitulate and fought through to get the win is probably a huge positive for her, and just kind of helps add mental armor for this particular run. I will say, though, there is a kind of a lengthy pattern with Iga where she has these close calls where she really has to dig deep, where it's she probably should have lost, surprisingly, and then the next time out it's very tough for her to kind of even get off the mat because she's exhausted so much of her reserve. And that said, her next round opponent she's going to have a day of rest advantage on, because Buzkova versus Jennifer is not resolved, so they're gonna have to play tomorrow because of the rain delays. And Iga probably in a pretty decent spot with her round 3, round 4 opponents to kind of physically recover from this Osaka match today, at which point she draws Danielle Collins, who plays, by the way, an awful lot like Naomi Osaka. So that's setting up to be a pretty competitive quarterfinal in the first quarter. And my enthusiasm for Iga winning this title is definitely a little dashed as opposed to a little buoyed after today's win, as crazy as that may sound. Everybody else in the women's draw, who we talked about previously, I still think Sabalenka is your clear second best and wins Q4. Rybakina looked fine, although she had some weird interactions with the press post-match that I didn't entirely understand. Like, there's just weird questions surrounding her and what's going on with her and her team right now for me. And I have not bet into her at all for this tournament. Coco Gauff comes through pretty cleanly today against an inferior opponent and has yet to be tested. Danielle Collins came through pretty cleanly and looked confident. Zheng Xinwen came through cleanly in round one and looked very confident. Maddie Keys playing some of the best tennis of her life, and she's going to draw Sabalenka in round 4 likely. Ostapenko still live for us as your Q2 winner, and I think the fact that we are just kind of going through the named favorites right now tells you, other than Maria Sakkari, everybody's still around, and so there's a long way to go until we really sort out this winner. But I will say, in the moments that it looked like Iga was down she was facing match point, and she actually almost got double broken in the third set, and it was almost just a complete blowout. And in those moments, I'm thinking, well, who does this benefit the most? Well, obviously Osaka, who is capable of playing that well, but even more than that, Danielle Collins and Coco Gauff would have been the beneficiaries on the top half of the draw. So I think as you kind of keep an eye out for the Iga rebound and how she comes back from this, I would just keep in mind that Danielle Collins and Coco Gauff would benefit from a surprise exit from Iga at this point. So with that, I still think this probably goes chalk, as crazy and as close as we came to it. Just a historic upset today.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you because it sounds like you're leaning towards the favorites for most of the matches and chalk to come out on top. I was going to see if there's any surprises, but do you feel the same way in the men's draw, or is it a little more open?
No, I feel opposite on the men's draw. I don't have huge questions about what we've seen from Sinner so far, but he has really not been tested. Like he's had 2 effective walkover opponents. Alcaraz had a walkover opponent in his first round. And then an opponent today in Jesper de Jong, who's a 21-year-old kid from the Netherlands who I've only ever seen play qualifying, and I didn't really have a ton of respect I wasn't expecting much out of his game today. And there were huge stretches of the match where he was the better player than Alcaraz. And that was a stunner because as Alcaraz got into that match, and in particular into the third set, he was just an unforced error machine. He couldn't find a winner to save his life. There was absolutely nothing coming off of his serve or his forehand, which is the kind of the key because he's dealing with an elbow injury. And so I have never felt less confident in a favorite to win a tournament than I feel about Alcaraz for this tournament. His little section of the draw, by the way, Rublev, Tsitsipas, both through cleanly. No real damage taken on either of those two so far. So, I think Alcaraz has his work cut out for him to get to the semifinals of this tournament, let alone win. And Djokovic, by the way, who's your third choice right now, like his form is still nowhere to be seen. He was unimpressive in his first round victory as well, although again it was not really a very competitive test. And there is an young American player named Tommy Paul who's kind of looming to really give Djokovic a scare potentially. And then after Paul, it's of course my guy Casper Ruud of Norway, who I think can ultimately oust him in the first quarterfinal.
All right, so I'd like to hear that. A little bit of chaos in the men's draw here. If you were to take one long shot right now on the men's draw, who would you put your pin on?
I still think that Ruud is a bet. He's 9-1. There haven't been any upsets yet, really. So we're still the only player out so far is Rafa Nadal, but he was pretty low likelihood to win. If you want like a true, like a real out there wild card, huge number, I would look at Jan-Lenny Struff. From Germany. His numbers have been very positive in this cycle, and he's in one of the weakest sections of the draw, where he just has to get by Daniil Medvedev potentially to get to a quarterfinal there. And while his quarterfinal opponent would likely be Alexander Zverev, who is quite tough, he's at least pretty familiar with his game and has beaten him head to head before. So Struff at the bomb type of number, I think in quarter 2 would be the only thing that I have eyes for as far as prices go.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I was pretty surprised when I looked at the odds and saw Medvedev as 33-1. So if you're going to target someone that knocks one out like that, it's probably a good guy to be targeting.
You want to hear a crazy Medvedev factoid?
Yeah.
So Medvedev has won 21 titles in the ATP Tour to this point in his career.
Okay.
21 different cities and tournaments. He has never won the same tournament twice.
Wow.
And yet he has 21 total titles. He has not ever won Roland-Garros, so if he does the impossible and wins this, then he would be 22 of 22. But yeah, always
No
kind of
repeats.
fascinated to see if he's ever going to get a repeat championship. But so far, 21 times, 21 different cities.
I got as someone who just came back from leaving the country for the first time. I went on vacation to Mexico. I'm thinking Daniel Medvedev would be a pretty fun guy to travel with. Then he probably goes to a city, he lives it up in that city, and he's like, "I'm never coming back."
What were the highlights of
So
Mexico?
yeah. Oh, the highlights of Mexico. Saw one of the man-made world wonders of the world, the Mayan Aztec temple. So it was
Nice.
104 degrees that day. So they had two ambulances for heat strokes. It was insane. My brother was burnt. He has pink skin. So went to a cenote, Drew. Do you know what a cenote is?
Of course, it's
Yeah.
a cave. It's a freshwater cave.
Yeah, it was amazing. They say it was, you go under the water, you're entering the Mayan underworld. I didn't like that when they
Oh.
said that, but it was very refreshing after being out 100-degree water to be in 100-degree weather to be in that water. But walking down 100 feet of like wooden steps and vines, like that was had my stomach turning. But it was a good trip. Wish I would have brought more ones and fives, not as many tens and twenties. So that's a first time traveler note for everyone. Do not bring higher bills as an American. They will try and take them all. But yeah, so that's about that for me, Drew. Best bet from the show today. What do you got?
Oh boy. Of everything we talked about, I'm gonna stick with Brianna Stewart, 10-1 for the WNBA MVP. I think that's a silly price. It's drifted for no reason other than recency bias.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Mine will be in the player prop market. If Lively's playing, I'm going to be on Daniel Gafford's points and rebounds under. Hopefully, I can get a 16.5, 17.5 number in that one. But if we're talking about some futures prices, don't forget to get your Paul Skeens odds. He's got about the double-digit strikeouts in the game right behind me if you have a telescope, Drew,
Wow.
against the Tigers. That guy is a machine. And I'll be watching him pitch against the Dodgers next week. So we'll be talking about that next Thursday. Drew, great show as always. I appreciate you, my friend. For our producers, Adam and Dan, thank you. And everyone watching and listening, we appreciate it as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next week. For Drew and Jay, see you tomorrow.